The following is a production of the Colonial Radio Theatre on the Air. No one would have believed in the last years of the 19th century that this world was being watched keenly and closely by intelligences greater than man's. That as men busied themselves about their various concerns, they were scrutinized and studied, as a man with a microscope might scrutinize the transient creatures that swarm and multiply in a drop of water. Yet across the gulf of space, minds that are to our minds as ours are to those of beasts that perish, intellects vast, cool, and unsympathetic, regarded this earth with envious eyes, and slowly and surely drew their plans against us.
The chances against anything manlike on Mars are 1,000,000 to 1. I said, Pearson, are you even listening to me?
Oh, I'm sorry, Professor. I've seen some rather strange things.
Such as?
Well, it almost seemed to me that as I looked at it, Mars seemed to quiver.
Planets do not quiver, young man. That's just the telescope vibrating with the activity of the clockwork that keeps the planet in view.
Really? Well, it seemed to grow larger and smaller, to advance, and then recede.
Because your eye is tired.
Well, yes, that's it. I'm sorry, Professor Ogilvy. What were you saying?
I was saying that the chances against anything manlike on Mars are...
1,000,000 to 1.
So you heard that part, did you?
But what about Professor Lavelle's article in Nature?
That's what this is all about, is it, Pearson?
A huge outbreak of incandescent gas upon the planet Mars towards midnight on the 12th.
Dear, oh dear.
Lavelle's spectroscope indicated a mass of flaming gas, chiefly hydrogen, moving with an enormous velocity towards us. He's inclined to think that, yes, this blaze may have been the casting of a huge gun in a vast pit sunk into their planet, from which their shots were fired at us.
I need scarcely remind you, young man, that the planet Mars revolves about the Sun at a mean distance of 140 million miles, and the light and heat it receives from the Sun is barely half of that received by this world. It's much older than our world, and long before this Earth ceased to be molten, life upon its surface must have begun its course.
And since Mars is older than our Earth, it's nearer its end than its beginning.
That would certainly follow, Pearson, yes.
Lavelle says that during the opposition of 1894, it was...
During the opposition of 1894, Perrotin of Nice observed a great light in the illuminated part of the disk.
And peculiar markings were seen near the site of that outbreak during the next 2 oppositions. How do you explain such phenomena, Professor?
Meteorites, my boy. They might be falling in a heavy shower upon the planet, or possibly a huge volcanic explosion.
You don't think that some intelligent life form might have been attempting to signal to us?
The likelihood of organic evolution taking the same direction on 2 adjacent planets.
1,000,000 to 1.
Quite so, Pearson. I imagine even the most hardened gambler would shudder at the odds.
All the same, don't you think a case might be made for... What the hell was that?
What?
A reddish flash, like a jet of gas.
Let me see. Out of the way. Let me see.
You see it, Professor?
I see. Extraordinary. I must make a record of it.
A signal? From Mars?
Nonsense, my boy. 1,000,000 to 1. 1,000,000 to 1.
It seems to me now almost incredibly wonderful that, with that swift fate hanging over us, men could go about their petty concerns as they did. It seemed so safe and tranquil. For my own part, I was much occupied in learning to ride the bicycle, and busy upon a series of papers discussing the probable developments of moral ideas as civilization progressed. Then came the night of the first falling star.
10 shots, night after night, all coming from Mars?
Mm-hmm. And always about midnight.
I wonder why they stopped.
Well, I suppose 10 explosions in just over a week would throw up a lot of dust and cause a lot of inconvenience.
To whom?
Well, that's the point, my dear. Is it being done by intelligent beings? Well, Martians, I suppose we should call them.
And Professor Ogilvy thinks not.
At this point, I'm no longer sure what Ogilvy thinks. This whole business has shaken his faith in his own convictions somewhat.
Richard, these flashes, could they be missiles? Or a vessel of sort?
Manned, you mean? Some sort of spaceship?
Well, is it possible?
11 days ago, I wouldn't have said...
Richard!
Oh, my God!
Richard, what's happening?
I don't know! It couldn't be.
Pearson! Pearson! For God's sake, wake up, man! Pearson!
Ogilvy? You know where I live?
Well, of course I know where you live. Why else would I be knocking on your door? Get dressed, Pearson! It's crashed somewhere on Horsell Common.
It?
Don't tell me you slept through the whole thing.
Of course I didn't. I thought the whole house was going to come down.
Who is it, Richard?
It's Ogilvy, dear. Look, what do you mean it's crashed? You mean that object, whatever it was...
Is at present lying somewhere on the common. Yes, I thought you'd be as anxious as I am to see it. It was flying eastward, over Winchester. At first, I took it for a falling star, but it left a greenish streak behind that glowed for some seconds.
It seemed to us incredibly low.
On its first appearance, I should say it was at a height of about 90 or 100 miles.
Good Lord. So everyone in Berkshire and Surrey must have seen it.
And Middlesex, of course. Pearson, do you hear that?
Well, it sounds like a fire. Smells like a fire.
More than one. It's the heather. The heather's on fire.
I suppose we follow the fires. The more we find, the closer we are to it.
Pearson, I see it! By the sand pits!
Coming.
It's not any sort of meteorite. It's a projectile!
Catherine was right.
Catherine?
My wife.
Oh. Look, it's almost entirely buried in the sand. It must have splintered that fir tree in its descent.
And what we can see is about, 30 feet long? So how large is it? And what is it? And what the bloody hell was that?
Probably the unequal cooling of the projectile's surface. It's still too hot to approach.
Well, it could be something inside there, if it's hollow, you know.
Of course it's not hollow.
Ogilvy, I think the end of the cylinder is rotating. Unscrewing.
It's impossible. Completely impossible.
I think there really is someone inside.
You're right. Dear God, they must be half roasted to death, trying to escape. I have to get down there. I have to help them.
Ogilvy! 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 You said it yourself. It's too hot to approach. Look, it's still glowing. You'll burn too, man.
You're right. You're right. Perhaps if I use my stick. It's no meteorite, Pearson. It's a cylinder. An artificial cylinder. And there's something alive inside it.
We met a wagoner and tried to make him understand, but the tale we told was so wild that the man simply drove on. We were equally unsuccessful with the potman who was unlocking the doors of the public house by Horsell Bridge. And then we saw Henderson, the journalist, in his garden, managed to make ourselves understood. Ogilvy told him all that he had seen. Henderson was a minute or so taking it in, and then he went to the railway station in order to telegraph the news to London.
Dead men from Mars.
What was that, Mr. Pearson?
Dead men from Mars. This story in the Daily Chronicle. Some sort of vessel has crashed, bringing men from another world.
Typical. We have enough trouble with the bloomin' Irish.
Well, in fairness, these fellows are dead, or so it's supposed.
More toast, Mr. Pearson.
Oh, no, thank you, Mrs. Wayne. Breakfast was most satisfying. Men from Mars, eh? Something like that might actually be worth leaving London for.
I'll still have to charge you rent.
Oh, yes. Perhaps I can stay with my brother Richard and his wife. They live somewhere near there. I should probably write to him. Yes.
Quite a considerable gathering.
Yes, my wire to the Astronomical Exchange roused every observatory in the Three Kingdoms. I'm expecting Stent, the Astronomer Royal, any time now.
I don't think everyone here has an interest in pure astronomy, Ogilvy.
I'm bound to agree. The term extraterrestrial has no meaning for these common folk.
I think I can see my butcher in the crowd.
Yes, and my golf caddy. Whoa, you boys, get away from that, it's dangerous! Wretched little monsters.
People must have come from as far as Woking and Chertsey to watch the men come out of the cylinder.
Men. Yes, about that, Pearson. Now that I've had time to think about it, it seems to me entirely likely that this unscrewing process is automatic. There may not be anyone inside there at all.
But you'll agree, Ogilvy, that the cylinder must have been made by someone.
Men from Mars, no doubt.
Even if it is automatic, think what it might contain. A manuscript, perhaps, coins and models and so forth.
And who's going to translate the manuscript, pray tell?
It's as good a theory as any other.
Let's postpone the theorizing until the workmen finish unscrewing the cylinder, shall we?
Are they having any luck with that?
No, they gave up some hours ago. It refuses to go any faster. Very irritating. Is your wife here?
I didn't really think it was appropriate. Actually, I rather wish I had now. Practically the rest of the village is all here. Or rather festive.
Hey, you there! Get away from the edge, you blithering idiot! I shouldn't have to tell a grown man not to...
God, I think he fell in. Stand back, everyone. Everyone stand back, please.
Can someone help keep these idiots back? We don't know what's in that confounded thing, you know!
You down there, give me your hand.
Pearson, I think it's about to open.
Come on, quickly, man, or you'll be crushed. God. The poor...
An accident. A horrible accident. They couldn't have known.
They?
They. Something is emerging. Look.
You were right, Ogilvy. It's not remotely manlike.
It's not, is it? I see. Tentacles. And the skin. It's glistening like wet leather. It's pulsating. Something fungoid, perhaps? No.
It's so big. The size of a bear.
It's no bear, Pearson.
I didn't say it was a bear. I said it was the size of a bear. Why is it making that awful sound? Is that natural, do you think?
It may have difficulty breathing. The atmosphere of Earth contains far more oxygen than that of Mars.
Ogilvy, I think it's looking at me.
It's fallen into the pit.
Can you see it?
Another one. There's another one. What ugly brutes. How many are in there?
Ogilvy, run.
That man's death was just an accident.
I said run. Everyone, get away from here. You must get away from here now. After the glimpse I had of the Martians emerging from their cylinder, I was a battleground of fear and curiosity. I didn't dare to go back towards the pit, but I felt a passionate longing to peer into it. I began walking in a big curve, seeking some point of vantage and continually looking at the sand heaps that hid these newcomers to our Earth. The sunset faded to twilight, and there was scarcely an intimation of movement from the pit. As dusk came on, a slow movement upon the sand pits began again, a movement that seemed to gather force as the stillness of the evening about the cylinder remained unbroken.
Good God, what's that?
The deputation's arrived. One of them's waving a flag, see?
Understandable. These are...
Martians.
Yes, I suppose so. These Martians are clearly intelligent creatures, in spite of their repulsive forms. Obviously, these fellows have decided to show them that we too are intelligent.
Do you recognize any of them?
Well, that stand at the front there. And I think I see Henderson. I don't recognize the chap with the flag.
Lavelle, perhaps.
Perhaps.
Ogilvy, did you see that? A sort of greenish smoke.
Something's definitely happening, my boy.
They're killing them. They're killing them, Ogilvy.
Some sort of heat ray. It's turned them to fire.
It swept them out of existence. It didn't mean any harm, and that thing just killed them. Why? Why would they do that?
Even the pine trees are on fire, as far away as Nafil.
If that heat ray had swept through a full circle.
I know, Pearson, you were right. We have to get away. If there's anywhere that can be safe from... Get down!
Ogilvy! I was alone upon this dark common, helpless, unprotected. Like a thing falling upon me from without came fear. With an effort, I turned and began a stumbling run through the heather. Once I turned, I didn't dare look back. I felt I was being played with, that when I was upon the very verge of safety, this mysterious death, as swift as the passage of light, would leap after me from the pit about the cylinder and strike me down.
Richard? Is that you? Richard? Richard! Richard, sit down. What's happened to you? You look so haggard. Dinner's cold, I'm afraid.
I don't care about dinner. Drink. Get me a drink.
There's tea.
Wine. The bottle. Give me the bottle.
What's wrong? Did something happen on the common?
Did something happen? They're dead, Catherine. They're all dead. All of them. Even Ogilvy.
Professor Ogilvy?
The Martians. There were things in that cylinder, creatures.
And they killed everyone?
They have some sort of a device. It slew them. Swiftly, silently.
A device can do that?
I saw it. Somehow they're able to generate a beam of intense heat. Ogilvy called it a heat ray.
And he's really dead?
Oh, he's dead all right. The whole deputation is dead. Anything combustible turns into flame at the touch of this heat ray.
Richard, they may come here.
No, that's the one thing I'm certain of. I don't think there's any danger of them establishing themselves on the Earth.
No danger? You just said they killed everyone in sight.
I've seen those creatures. The horror of them, Catherine. But they're the most sluggish things that ever crawled on the Earth. They can scarcely move. They may keep the pit and kill anyone who comes near it, but at least they can't get out of it.
But why not?
Probably the gravitational difficulty. The force of gravity on this planet is 3 times what it is on the surface of Mars.
Then a Mars man.
A Martian.
A Martian would weigh 3 times more than he would on Mars.
Yes. His muscular strength would be the same, but his body would be a cope of lead to him. I'm just guessing, though. Ogilvy would have known more about it.
Poor Ogilvy. To think of him still lying there, dead.
Oh, he's not. There's nothing left of him, just ashes. Damn the man! Why did he have to... They've done a foolish thing, Catherine. They're dangerous, mad with terror, perhaps.
Perhaps they didn't expect to find any living things, or any intelligent living things.
A shell in the pit.
A what?
A shell in the pit. Well, that's how they do it, the military. Fire a shell into that pit. If the worst comes to the worst, it'll kill them all.
Richard, this is war. People must be warned about the heat ray.
I don't see how. People are probably already on their way from the city to see the cylinder.
And there's no way to stop them.
All night long, the common from Horsell to Maybury was deserted and brightly ablaze. And yet, few people in Woking even knew that the cylinder had opened. For the most part, the daily routine of working, eating, drinking, sleeping, went on as it had done for countless years, as though no planet Mars existed in the sky. If you'd drawn a circle with a radius of 5 miles around the Woking sandpits, I doubt if you would have had one human being outside it whose emotions or habits were at all affected by the newcomers. Now and again a light ray, like the beam of a warship's searchlight, swept the common, and the heat ray was ready to follow. This cylinder was sticking into the skin of our planet Earth like a poisoned dart was. But the poison was scarcely working yet. In the rest of the world, the stream of life still flowed as it had flowed for immemorial years. The fever of war that would presently clog every vein and artery had still to develop. At about 11, a company of soldiers came through Horsell and deployed along the edge of the common to form a cordon. Later, a second company marched through Cobham to deploy on the north side of the common. The next morning, about 400 men of the Cardigan Regiment started from Aldershot. A few seconds after midnight, the crowd in the Chertsey Road saw a star fall from heaven into the pine woods to the northwest. This was the second cylinder.
That was the last train?
Last train till morning, sir.
Damn.
Wanted to see the Martians, eh?
Actually, my brother lives quite close to the... Well, frankly, yes.
I'm sure they'll still be here in the morning, sir.
Will they, though? There hasn't been any more news about them. No special edition, nothing. What's going on down there?
How did you sleep, dear?
Badly. Got up early, chatted with the neighbours. No chance of going back onto the common.
I can't imagine why you'd want to go back, Richard. I spoke to Mr. Wilcox. He says it's the second cylinder they're shelling.
In the hope of destroying it before it opens, no doubt.
He's of the opinion that the troops will be able to destroy the Martians before the day is out.
Let us hope so.
Richard, what's that?
Dear Lord, no. Get down!
Oh, God! Oh, God! Oh! That was the heat ray.
It was. Look out there, the tops of the trees are burning.
And the college roof. I think I can get a better view.
Don't go out there!
Ah!
Catherine, are you all right?
The chimney. It hit the chimney.
We're within range of the heat ray now. We can't stay here. We've got to go, Catherine.
Where are we to go?
You have cousins at Leatherhead, don't you?
Leatherhead? How are we to get to Leatherhead?
The landlord of the Spotted Dog. He has a horse and cart.
Will he let you have it?
I'll buy it if I have to.
He'll want to use it himself.
Then I'll rent it.
You can't rent it. We're not coming back.
You're not.
Richard!
I have to see Catherine. With Ogilvy dead, there's no one else. No one truly capable of understanding. Good boy. Good boy. Get in the cart, Catherine.
Excuse me, sir. It's not safe to stay here. Orders of the military. You're going to have to leave.
What does it look like we're trying to do?
You're with the artillery.
Yes, ma'am.
What news?
Well, the Martians seem to be building something in that pit of theirs, ma'am. No idea what, though. Seems as though they're tied to the pit by their sheer heaviness, though.
Just as I said.
They probably can't do much more than crawl their way out of it.
And the heat ray?
The heat... that weapon of theirs. Well, we've spotted smoke in the Byfleet pine woods eastward and Woking to the west.
Woking? Well, then they're headed for London.
Richard, your brother.
They're setting fire to everything within range. Now, will you two please get out of here?
Leatherhead is about 12 miles from Maybury Hill. The scent of hay was in the air through the lush meadows, and the hedges on either side were sweet and gay with multitudes of dog roses. My wife was curiously silent throughout the drive, oppressed with forebodings of evil. Thick streamers of black smoke, shot with threads of red fire, were driving up into the still air, throwing dark shadows upon the green treetops eastward. We got to Leatherhead without misadventure about 9 o'clock, and the horse had an hour's rest while I took supper with my cousins and commended my wife to their care. For my own part, something very like the war fever that occasionally runs through a civilized community had got into my blood, and in my heart I was not so very sorry that I had to return to Maybury Hill that night. I was even afraid that the last fusillade I'd heard might mean the extermination of our invaders from Mars. It was nearly 11 when I beheld it. It was the third falling star. And then, abruptly, my attention was arrested by something moving rapidly down the opposite slope of Maybury Hill.
describe it. A monstrous tripod higher than many houses, striding over the young pine trees and smashing them aside. A walking engine of glittering metal, and I was galloping hard to meet it. I wrenched the horse's head hard round to the right, and in another moment the dog cart heeled over upon the horse and I was flung sideways and fell heavily. The horse lay motionless, his neck broken, poor brute. I lay helplessly in full sight of the marsh. I expected nothing but death. I have a dim memory of the foot of a Martian coming down within a yard of my head. In another moment, the colossal mechanism went striding by me and passed uphill towards Pireford. And then, very slowly, I realized that by a miracle, I had escaped. My God, they're talking to one another. I had a vague idea of going on to my own house, and that was as much motive as I had. I staggered through the trees and finally splashed out into the lane that ran down from my home. Oh God. Oh God, oh God, oh God. They're here.
Who is that?
It's all right, I'm not armed.
I am.
I thought you were one of the Martians.
Oh, I thought the same about you. They're out of the pit now. They've got these machines. They're like ironclads.
I know, I just saw one.
Don't light the lamp! If they see it, they'll... Hey, I know you.
Well, you should, this is my house. You're the soldier I spoke to this morning.
12th Horse Artillery. I told you and your wife to leave here. Why'd you come back?
I'm starting to ask myself the same question. I suppose you could say I wanted to be in at the death.
In at the death. Oh, there was plenty of death, all right, Mr...
Pearson, Richard Pearson. Why did you come here? Were you trying to hide?
That's it.
Here, take some whiskey. And for God's sake, put that gun away, please. Tell me what's happened.
What hasn't happened? They wiped us out.
Here.
God, that's good stuff.
Now tell me about the Martians.
We were firing across the common. It seemed to me like the first party of Martians were crawling towards their second cylinder under cover of a metal shield. Then this shield, it rose up on metal legs.
It was one of the fighting machines.
My horse trod in a rabbit hole and came down. I was thrown into a depression in the ground. That was when the gun exploded behind me. The ammunition blew up.
Caused by the Martian heat ray, no doubt.
It must have been. When I came to, there was fire all about me. And I was lying under a heap of charred, dead men. My mates.
I'm sorry. Nothing could have prepared you for this, I know.
I lay still, scared out of my wits. We'd been wiped out, and the smell like burnt meat. I saw that metal monster was walking to and fro, and it had a kind of metal arm and a funnel, and that's where the heat ray came from. In a few minutes, there wasn't a living thing left upon the common, and every bush and tree was burning. That metal giant saved Woking Station until the last. The whole town's just a heap of fiery ruins now.
The whole town?
And then I saw a second of those titans they built climbing up out of the pit. It followed the first, and that's when I began to crawl very quickly across the hot ash towards here.
I'm glad you arrived safely.
I almost didn't. I saw one of those Martian giants pursue a man. catch him up in one of those steely tentacles and knock his head against the trunk of a pine tree. It wasn't till after nightfall that I made a rush for it and got over the railway embankment. You shouldn't have come back, Mr. Pearson.
Yes, I'm afraid you're right. The whole of Woking gone. Oh, Warwick, please say you got out of London. Have you eaten?
Not since midday.
There's some mutton and bread in the pantry. You're welcome to it.
Thanks.
When we had finished eating, I looked out of the study window. In one night, the valley had become a valley of ashes. The fires had dwindled now, but the countless ruins of shattered and gutted houses, and blasted and blackened trees that the night had hidden, stood out now, gaunt and terrible in the pitiless light of dawn. Never before in the history of warfare had destruction been so indiscriminate and so universal. And shining with the growing light of the east, 3 of the metallic giants stood about the pit, their cowls rotating as though they were surveying the desolation they had made.
The pit looks even bigger this morning. What do you suppose those puffs of green smoke are?
God knows. Perhaps if we got closer...
Not bloody likely.
Pity. I'd like to look at those fighting machines of theirs. Are they intelligent mechanisms? I suppose such a thing is possible. Or does a Martian sit within each, ruling, directing, using, like a man's brain sits and rules his body?
What are you asking me for?
I wonder how a steam engine might seem to an intelligent lower animal. If I could only examine them.
Okay, you can risk your neck that way if you like, mister. But I'm making my way to London. I've got to rejoin my battery.
Yes. And I should return to Leatherhead.
Is that where your wife is?
With her cousins, yes.
But then you should be with her. Take her somewhere safe, if anywhere in England is safe anymore.
Not if the Martians have those machines. We'll go to New Haven, get out of the country.
Oh, I don't blame you, sir.
You could do the same, you know.
Nah. I let my mates down yesterday. I have to do something to help destroy these bloody Martians.
Well then. Then I suppose I'll bid you farewell.
Where the hell do you think you're going?
To Leatherhead.
Have you forgotten? There's one of them cylinders between us and Leatherhead with those metal giants guarding it.
I'll take my chances.
It's no kindness to the right sort of wife to make her a widow, Mr. Pearson.
Well then what do you suggest?
You come with me, under cover of the woods, northward as far as Epsom. It's a big detour, but you'll reach Leatherhead alive.
I suppose so.
We're going to need to take some of that whiskey and any food we can get in our pockets.
The other houses in the district seemed deserted as we crept down the ill-made road by which I'd come overnight. In the road lay a group of 3 charred bodies close together, struck dead by the heat ray. Here and there were things that people had dropped, a clock, a slipper, a silver spoon and the like. Save ourselves, there didn't seem to be a living soul on Maybury Hill. The majority of the inhabitants must have escaped by way of the old Woking Road. We pushed through the woods and towards the railway without meeting a soul. There was not a breath of wind, and everything was strangely still. And even the birds were hushed. After a time we drew near the road, and as we did so, we heard the clatter of hooves, and saw through the tree stems 3 cavalry soldiers riding slowly towards Woking. It was a lieutenant and a couple of privates of the 8th Hussars.
Well, well, you're the first men I've seen coming this way this morning. What's brewing?
Guns destroyed last night, sir. Been trying to rejoin battery.
And what about this chap?
Just trying to get to my wife.
I see. Not one of ours, then?
I'm not one of anybody's. My name's Pearson, I'm an astronomer.
You'll come in sight of the Martians, I expect. About half a mile along this road, sir.
These Martians, what the dickens are they like?
Giants in armor, sir. 100 feet high. 3 legs and a body like aluminium, with a mighty great head in a hood. Sir.
What confounded nonsense.
Well, you'll see, sir. They carry a kind of box, sir, that shoots fire and strikes you dead.
What, do you mean a gun?
No, sir. It's called a heat ray. Well, this man calls it a heat ray.
I'm afraid it's perfectly true, Lieutenant.
Now, look here. What's your name, soldier?
Essex, sir. Like the county.
Now, look here, Essex. We're detailed here, clearing people out of their houses. If you want to get back into the fray, you better go along and report yourself to Brigadier General Marvin. Half a mile, you say?
At most.
Well, I suppose it's my business to see them. You'll find the Brigadier General at Weybridge. Know the way?
I do, sir.
Then tell him all you know. Walk on.
By Byfleet Station, we emerged from the pine trees and found the country calm and peaceful under the morning sunlight. We were far beyond the range of the heat ray there, and had it not been for the silent desertion of some of the houses, and the knot of soldiers standing on the bridge over the railway and staring down the line towards Woking, the day would have seemed very like any other Sunday. Through the gate of a field, we saw, across a stretch of flat meadow, 6 12-pounders standing neatly at equal distances.
Bows and arrows against the lightning. I haven't seen that heat ray yet.
No one in Weybridge could tell us where the headquarters were established. The whole place was in such confusion as I'd never seen in any town before. Carts, carriages everywhere, the most astonishing miscellany of conveyances and horseflesh. Grenadiers in white were warning people to move now or to take refuges in their cellars as soon as the firing began. We remained there until midday, and at that hour we found ourselves at the place near Shepperton Lock where the Wey and Thames join. Then, from the direction of Chertsey, came the sound of a gun.
It's starting.
The soldiers will stop them!
You see them yonder?
I see them, there's 4 of them! The heat ray!
God, not again! The water! Get under the water!
Did everyone hear that? You all need...
Just get in!
Whoa!
Mrs. Wayne! Mrs. Wayne!
Mr. Pearson, keep your voice down. Mr. Barry was up all night with his tooth. He hasn't had a wink of sleep.
Mr. Barry has got to get out of here. We all do.
What are you on about?
The Martians! The bloody Martians!
Mr. Pearson! Language.
They're coming this way. We're all in danger if we stay.
The newspapers say those things can't even get out of that pit they're in. Something to do with, gravity or something. I don't know.
They were wrong. They're out of the pit and moving. This is the latest edition. Read this.
All right. God. See here. Martians, Martians, Martians. Yes, yes. Metallic shields. Spider-like machines, 100 feet high. Wrecked Woking Station. And massacred an entire battalion of the Cardigan Regiment. Great anxiety in West Surrey.
It says they're advancing. There's already fighting going on in Weybridge, and guns have been heard in Hampton Court Station.
But they're not supposed to be able to get out.
Well, they are out. Wait. Do you hear that?
It's Big Ben.
No. There's something else. They're here already.
Finally coming around, are you? Can I get you some water?
Oh, I think I've had enough water to last me a lifetime. Oh. Where the hell am I?
Do not blaspheme, sir. Remember, I saved your life.
And I'm very grateful, Reverend. Where's Essex?
Essex? A weary walk from here, sir.
Not the county, the man. An artilleryman. Have you seen him?
I saw only you in the water.
Damn it. And what are the fighting machines?
Those objects.
Yes.
What do you know of them? What do they mean?
Mean?
Why are these things permitted? What sins have we done? The morning service was over. I was walking through the roads to clear my brain for the afternoon, and then fire, earthquake, death, as if it were Sodom and Gomorrah. All our work undone. What have we done? What has Weybridge done? Everything destroyed. The church. We rebuilt it only 3 years ago. Gone. Swept out of existence. Why?
I wish I could tell you, Reverend.
The smoke of her burning goeth up for ever and ever.
Yes, I expect so. Look, are we anywhere near Sunbury?
What are we to do? Are these creatures everywhere? Has the earth been given over to them?
Sunbury, are we far from there?
Only this morning I officiated at early celebration.
Yes, I know, but things have changed. The celebration is cancelled. You must keep your head, Reverend. There's still hope.
Hope?
A plentiful hope. These metal giants aren't demons, they're Martians. Every 24 hours they bring more reinforcements to this world. This is a war we're fighting.
This is no war. This is the beginning of the end. The great and terrible day of the Lord, when men shall call upon the mountains and the rocks to fall upon them and hide them from the face of him that sitteth upon the throne.
Be a man. You're scared out of your wits, and so am I. What good is religion if it collapses under calamity? Think of what earthquakes and floods, wars and volcanoes have done to men. Did you really think God had exempted Weybridge? He's not an insurance agent.
How can we escape? They're invulnerable, pitiless.
Neither the one nor perhaps the other. And the mightier they are, the more sane and wary we should be. I know they can be killed, I'm sure of it.
How can Satan's ministers be killed?
We're in the midst of battle. The Martians are over yonder, and if we don't get out of here, the fighting machines will be coming our way.
Do you hear that?
Come on, we need to follow this path northward. They're almost certainly heading for London if they're not there already. God only knows what conditions are like there.
It's not fire. It's some kind of...
Smoke.
Smoke?
Well, that's what it says here.
What exactly is that?
It appears to be some kind of military dispatch. I found it in the mud. The Martians are able to discharge enormous clouds of a black and poisonous vapor by means of... something, I can't make that point out. They have destroyed Richmond, Kingston, and... that must say Wimbledon. And advancing towards London, destroying everything on the way.
Judgment Day is upon us.
No, the black smoke is a weapon, but what does it do?
You read it for yourself, Mr. Pearson. It kills.
Well, yes, but so does the heat ray. Does this have some sort of secondary purpose? Do they want the bodies for some reason? Smoke, a vapor. Does it diffuse? If not, what happens to it?
Hide!
Seems to be heading towards Staines.
That ghastly cry!
I've heard it before. I wonder what it means.
Why should it mean anything?
Because we're dealing with an intelligence. An alien intelligence, but an intelligence nonetheless. We have to understand them in order to defeat them.
These agents of Satan don't seem to understand us, and they are close to achieving total extermination.
But do they grasp that we're organized, disciplined, working together?
We are to these leviathans as a disturbed hive of bees.
They'll stop them in London. They have to. They'll have prepared pitfalls. The powder mills at Hounslow will be ready as a snare. Then another cylinder fell, a brilliant green meteor. Before the guns on the Richmond and Kingston line of hills began, there was a fitful cannonade far away in the southwest, guns being fired haphazardly before the black vapor could overwhelm the gunners. Never once did they have the ghost of a chance against the Martians. Wherever there was a possibility of guns being laid for them unseen, a fresh canister of the black vapor was discharged. And where the guns were openly displayed, the heat ray was brought to bear. Sunday night was the end of the organized opposition to their movements. After that, no body of men would stand against them, so hopeless was the enterprise. Before dawn, the black vapor was pouring through the streets of Richmond, and the disintegrating organism of government was, with a last expiring effort, rousing the population of London to the necessity of flight.
Get down off that cart.
It's not a cart, it's a chaise, and it's mine.
It's mine now. Get off of it.
Leave me alone.
Hey, what do you think you're doing?
Keep out of this, mister. It's the end of the world, and that means every man for himself.
A real man wouldn't terrorize a lady. Now step away!
Should have minded your own business, you bloody toff. Oof! Now bugger off.
That was a mistake, my friend. I used to box at college. Ugh. In fact, I got quite good at it. Ugh. Ruffian. Madam, are you all right?
There's room on the chaise for two. All he had to do was ask.
Fine. In that case, I'm asking. Any chance of a lift?
Where are you headed?
That's a very good question. Not as far as America. Chelmsford, I suppose. I have friends there.
I could take you as far as Chelmsford, I guess. Climb up.
Why, thank you. I don't believe we've been properly introduced, madam. My name is Pearson, Warwick Pearson.
Elphinstone, Mrs. George Elphinstone.
Pleasure to meet you. Shall I take the reins?
No, you take this, in case we run into more trouble.
A gun?
Walk on.
You had a gun the whole time and you let me fight that brute?
My husband said I was only to use it in an emergency.
Did he? Well, that sort of felt like an emergency from where I was standing. Forgive me for asking, but where is your husband? Shouldn't he be with you at a time like this?
He's a surgeon. We live at Stanmore.
Surgeon, eh? What a coincidence.
You're a surgeon too?
Well, no, not yet. I'm a medical student. I'm sorry. Please go on.
Well, he was visiting a patient in Pinner when he heard about these Martians. He hurried home, had me pack some provisions, and told me to drive on to Edgware and catch a train from there.
And he stayed behind?
To warn the neighbours. He said he'd overtake me about 4:30.
Well, it's nearly 9 now, and there's no way to get to Edgware. There's just too much traffic. We'd be better off heading for St. Albans. Or New Barnet. No, that'd be hopeless, too. Forget about taking me to Chelmsford. Our only chance is to head for Harwich. We can get out of the country altogether.
But George...
Would have been here by now if he could, yes? I promise to protect you on his behalf. It just so happens I'm an expert shot.
As well as a champion prize fighter.
I never said I was a champion. I only said I was quite good.
Have you actually seen these Martians, Mr. Pearson?
Oh, please call me Warwick. And yes, I have. They're monstrous things. The Pool of London was filled with steamboats taking fugitives out of the city. It was a mad confusion. I saw boats and barges jammed in the northern arch of the Tower Bridge. People were actually clambering down the piers of the bridge to try to jump onto the passing craft. And then a Martian began wading down the river. An hour later, there was nothing left but wreckage.
Gracious.
They're in possession of the whole of London now. Those metal things have been seen at Highgate, even Neasden. There's a rumor that half the members of the government have gathered at Birmingham, and that mines are being laid across the Midland counties.
As my brother and Mrs. Elphinstone went on towards the south of Barnet, the main road became a boiling stream of people, a torrent of human beings rushing northward, one pressing on another. They were all thirsty, weary, and footsore. A great bank of dust, white and luminous in the blaze of the sun, made everything within 20 feet of the ground grey and indistinct.
Let's go back, Warwick. We cannot cross this hell.
We must.
George was right. We should have taken the train.
When are you going to accept it? George is dead! I'm sorry, Mrs. Elphinstone. I don't know what I'm saying. The first cylinder practically landed on my brother's doorstep. I'm worried about him, too, and his wife. Your husband couldn't have known how crowded the streets were. I promise you, you'd never have got near to the central terminus.
Warwick, look.
Another cylinder! What was that, the fifth? The sixth?
They swept through Chipping Barnet with the torrent. The din and confusion were indescribable. But in and beyond the town, the road forks repeatedly, and this relieved the stress to some extent. Near East Barnet, they halted for the rest of the afternoon, and began to suffer the beginnings of hunger. The night was cold, and neither of them dared to sleep. In the evening, many people hurried along the road near their stopping place, fleeing from unknown dangers before them, and going in the direction from which my brother had come. Had the Martians aimed only at destruction, they might easily have annihilated the entire population of London as it spread itself slowly through the home counties. This was no disciplined march, it was a stampede, gigantic and terrible, without order and without a goal. 6 million people, unarmed and unprovisioned, driving headlong. It was the beginning of the rout of civilization, of the massacre of mankind. Warwick preferred to push on at once to the coast rather than wait for food, though both of them were very hungry. Near Tillingham, they suddenly came in sight of the sea, and the most amazing crowd of shipping of all sorts that it is possible to imagine.
I suppose when those sailors couldn't go up the Thames any longer, most of them came on to here.
Thank the good Lord they did. I see a craft of every kind. Yachts, cattle ships, ocean tramps.
I don't know about you, Mrs. Elphinstone, but I'd prefer something a little more secure. Something like... Yes, something like that!
What?
Look out there. Very low in the water. An ironclad.
The Thunder Child.
The only warship in sight.
You don't really suppose they'd let us on board, Warwick? They're here for our protection.
And probably not the only ones. See that black smoke in the distance?
Black smoke?
Not from the Martians. I think that must be the Channel Fleet. Not that they can do any good.
Always the optimist, aren't you, Warwick?
Always the realist, Mrs. Elphinstone. That's why I propose to get out of England as soon as possible.
But together?
I appreciate it's not really the done thing, but the proprieties will have to be ignored if we want to stay alive. Do you have objections to that?
None at all. I'd rather die than trust myself friendless in a foreign country.
Well, I doubt that the French and the Martians are all that similar, but that suits me fine. We've got to get down to the beach. Get the attention of one of those paddle steamers. You have money, I hope?
Well, don't you?
It may surprise you to learn this, but a medical student doesn't make a great deal.
£36.
36?
For the two of us, I trust.
Mm-hmm.
That's robbery.
That's life, lady. If you don't value yours, I wish you good luck with the Martians.
All right. I'm sure we have 1, 2...
This should be enough.
That'll do it.
Where are you bound?
Do you care?
Where?
Ostend. Does that suit you?
So long as there are no Martians there, it suits me fine.
Is there food?
There is, but it's not cheap.
Of course it isn't. Forgive me, but I was under the impression that pirates were a thing of the past.
You have my sympathies, mister. I'm glad she's not my wife.
We're not married. The guns! They're coming.
Where's it coming from?
Mr. Robinson, get us out of here!
In the south! Look!
Mr. Robinson!
It's getting closer!
Oh my God!
We're not going to make it out in time.
We have to! I'm not going to die here!
It's the Thunder Child!
The what?
The Thunder Child! The Thunder Child!
The torpedo ram!
It's no good. They can't be stopped.
Shut up!
Oh, you said the same thing.
I know. Just hold on!
Why doesn't the ship fire?
He's not willing to fire. He's going to ram the Martian.
The man's a fool.
Come on, Thunder Child!
Ah,
Cover your eyes!
they got the ship.
The engines must still be working. It's not stopping. It's going to hit! It's going to hit!
Cut it down. The bloody thing's cut down!
We can get away!
Mr. Robinson, what the hell are we waiting for? Get us out of here!
I don't see the Thunder Child. It's gone. They saved us, and they're all gone.
The town in Sheen, it seemed, had escaped destruction, but the place was silent and deserted. The Reverend Linnet and I happened on no dead, though the night was too dark for us to see into the side roads. My companion suddenly complained of faintness and thirst, and we decided to try one of the houses. This place should be safe for now. We're far enough away from the black vapor.
Our fate will find us out eventually.
Please yourself. And don't light any matches, we don't want to be seen. For the time being, Reverend, we're cut off from the rest of the world.
What do you suppose became of the owners of this house?
If they had any brains at all, they're probably on their way out of the country. And I'm still here. I wonder what that says about me. And Catherine, what's become of Catherine?
Your wife, Mr. Pearson.
The last time I saw her was at Leatherhead. Is she still there, terrified, in danger? She must be mourning me as a dead man already.
We are dead. The entire human race. We simply haven't realized it yet.
Oh, shut up! If there's any consolation, it's that the Martians are probably moving toward London.
Where your brother lives.
He won't be there now.
You can't know that.
Perhaps I have faith, Reverend. Just stay away from me. This house is big enough for you to do that, isn't it?
The black smoke is drifting riverward.
Are you even listening to me?
And what is all that redness?
What? What redness? What are you talking about?
Out there. Towards the river.
Let me see. What is that? Some kind of weed grown from Martian seeds? What does it mean?
This insistence on meaning. Why must anything mean anything?
Because it all means something. The Martians didn't come here just to wipe us out. There is a reason for all of this. If I only knew what it was, then there might be a way to...
Are you better?
What?
This seems to be becoming a habit with us, Mr. Pearson. Please, don't move. The floor is covered with smashed crockery. You can't possibly move without making a noise. And I fancy they are outside.
They? Oh, God.
Far from it, Mr. Pearson.
The Martians? But... that wasn't the heat ray. I mean, I didn't hear... We're still inside the house, aren't we?
Don't move.
I can see light. Where's the light coming from, not the windows?
There's a hole in the wall, and the windows are all smashed.
Then why can't I see through them? What happened? A cylinder? Another shot from Mars? It struck this house. And we're buried under the ruins.
God have mercy upon us.
Listen. They're out there.
Oh.
Outside there began a metallic hammering. Then, after a quiet interval, a sound like the hissing of an engine. These noises continued intermittently, and seemed, if anything, to increase in number as time wore on. For many hours we must have crouched there, silent and shivering, until our tired attention failed. I'm inclined to believe we must have spent the greater portion of a day asleep. But my hunger became so insistent it moved me to wakefulness. The thudding vibration caused the plaster to detach and left a vertical slit in the debris. By raising myself cautiously across a beam, I was able to see out of this gap.
A vast change, I imagine, Mr. Pearson.
A vast change indeed. Last night this was a quiet suburban roadway. The buildings have practically vanished, completely pulverized.
The cylinder. Can you see the cylinder?
Just about. The pit's already larger than the one at Woking. It's like mud under the blow of a hammer. I suppose the front portion of this house must have been destroyed completely, probably the whole ground floor.
And now, we're buried beneath soil and ruins, interred without any of the proper ceremony.
We're not actually dead.
Yet, but we are closed in by tons of earth on every side.
Not every side.
Then we can escape.
Unfortunately, no. The side that's clear contains the cylinder.
And we are already in our grave, simply waiting to die.
Not necessarily. All we have to do is wait until they're done with this pit. We just need patience.
And food.
Yes. I can see one of the machines, but I think it's been deserted by its occupant.
You think?
I hope. Never seen one like this before. It's a different design.
Why should you care about such things when our lives are already forfeit?
Oh, be quiet. Some kind of excavating machine, I think. It's like a metallic spider. 5-jointed, agile legs and an extraordinary number of jointed levers, bars, and tentacles. And no wheels anywhere. Surely they must know about the wheel.
Satan's motives are his own, and his ingenuity is boundless.
If you can't say anything constructive, Reverend, then don't say anything at all. I can see some Martians crawling about.
Unholy creatures.
They move so slowly and painfully. Even on the common, I didn't see them this close. About 4 feet in diameter, a V-shaped mouth like a fleshy beak. Pointed upper lip, no brow ridges, chin or nostril. I wonder if they even have a sense of smell. Do they sleep? Probably not. No extensive muscular mechanism to recuperate. A wedge-like lower lip with whip-like tentacles in bunches. Interesting how its mouth keeps quivering, and that breathing. The atmosphere must be strange to it. And the greater gravitational energy of the Earth evidently accounts for the heaviness and painfulness of their movements. Without their machines, they're almost crippled.
They're the most unearthly creatures it's possible to conceive.
That, Reverend, I won't argue with. Some single tight tympanic surface at the back of this head or body. I imagine the greater part of this structure is the brain, sending nerves to the eyes, ear, and tentacles. I wonder what their digestive apparatus looks like. I mean, they're almost entirely heads. They don't wear any clothing, so they must be less sensible of changes of temperature than we are. No entrails that I can see. And no sex organs.
Mr. Pearson, please.
The Martians must be absolutely without sex. Probably they reproduce asexually, bud off like lily bulbs or the freshwater polyp. Perhaps this is how humanity will eventually evolve.
Blasphemy!
We're just in the beginning of the evolution the Martians have worked out, Reverend. They've become mere brains. As the days wore on, my companion's utter carelessness of any consideration so intensified our distress and danger that I had to resort to threats to quiet him. That brought him to reason for a time, but he was one of those weak creatures, void of pride, full of shifty cunning, who faced neither God nor man, not even themselves. And while we fought out our dark, dim contest of whispers, snatched food and drink, outside in the pitiless sunlight of that terrible June was the strange wonder, the unfamiliar routine of the Martians in the pit. Reinforcements are arriving. 3 of them, I think.
Their name is Legion, but they are many.
What are they here for, I wonder? Why come back to the pit?
What was that? What's that?
People. People are falling from the machines.
That hellish noise. What on earth is it?
It's the call to feed.
They're eating those people.
Not eating them. It's the blood they want. That's why they've allowed so many of us to live this long. They digest human blood. When you look at it from a purely scientific perspective, I suppose that the physiological advantages are undeniable. I mean, think of the tremendous waste of human time and energy occasioned by the digestive process.
Your science has no morality, sir.
I'm simply trying to see things from the Martians' point of view.
And why should you wish to do so?
Well, to defeat them, of course.
How do you propose to defeat them when we're trapped down here, slowly starving to death?
If the Martians make the pit nothing more than a temporary encampment, they might not consider it necessary to guard it. We might have a chance to escape. Or we might dig our way out.
Even if we could, the chances of our emerging within sight of some sentinel seems to me rather too great. I'm afraid you'd have to do all the digging yourself, Pearson. I'm afraid I am far too weak.
I discovered a hatchet and spent some hours digging as silently as possible. But when I'd made a hole about a couple of feet deep, the loose earth collapsed noisily, and I did not dare continue. I lost heart, and lay down on the scullery floor for a long time, having no spirit even to move. After that, I abandoned altogether the idea of escaping by excavation. On the 4th or 5th night, I heard a sound like heavy guns. It was very late, and the moon was shining brightly. The Martians had taken away the excavating machine, and save for a fighting machine that stood on the bank of the pit, the place was deserted. It was on the 6th day of our imprisonment that I found myself alone. Reverend! Reverend! What the hell are you doing?
Leave me alone.
That wine's all we've got to drink.
Leave me be, blasphemer.
Give me that. Well, that's just marvelous.
What are you going to do?
What am I going to do? I'm going to do what I always do. Approach the problem scientifically. I'm going to divide what remains of our food into rations, enough to last us 10 days.
I'm just so hungry.
Well, you're not eating any more today, Reverend, and neither am I.
What are we going to drink now?
There's a rainwater pump, that'll have to do.
This is unendurable.
Will you be quiet?
I can be silent no longer.
Are you insane?
It is just, O God. It is just. On me and mine be the punishment laid.
Shut up.
We have sinned. We have fallen short. The poor were trodden in the dust, and I held my peace.
Hold it now.
I preached acceptable folly when I should have stood up and called upon them to repent.
Shut up, or I will shut you up.
I have been still too long, and now I must bear my witness. Woe unto this unfaithful city! Woe to the inhabitants of the earth by reason of the other voices of the trumpet!
For God's sake, man!
The word of the Lord is upon me! Ah! They have me! The creatures have me!
Give me your hand, I'll try to pull you free.
No! I must bear my witness! It has been too long delayed!
Oh my God. You poor mad fool. I crept back to the coal cellar, shut the door, and began to cover myself up as much as I could in the darkness. Damn you. Why did you have to... Damn you! What? Oh God. They're looking for me. It's got my foot. Dear Lord, it's got me. Let's take the shoe, just take the shoe. The creature came into the scullery no more, but I lay all the next day in the close darkness, buried among coals and firewood, not daring even to crawl out for the drink for which I craved. It was the 11th day before I ventured into the pantry. Every scrap of food had gone. I thought I had become deaf, for the noises of movement I'd been accustomed to hearing from the pit had ceased absolutely. I didn't feel strong enough to crawl to the peephole and check. On the 12th day, my throat was so painful that I took the chance of alarming the Martians by drinking a couple of glassfuls of blackened and tainted rainwater. The light that came into the scullery was no longer grey, but red. To my disordered imagination, it seemed the colour of blood. The fronds of this strange red weed had grown across the hole in the wall, turning the half-light of the place into a crimson-coloured obscurity. The pit was still. They've gone. A multitude of crows hopped and fought over the skeletons of the dead the Martians had consumed. There was not a living thing in the pit. Slowly I thrust myself out through the red weed and stood upon the mound of rubble. Then, in a gust of desperate resolution, I scrambled to the top of the mound in which I had been buried so long. No Martians. No Martians anywhere. I had not realized what had been happening to the world, had not anticipated this startling vision of unfamiliar things. I found about me the landscape, weird and lurid, of another planet. The Martian weed had turned the trees scarlet and crimson, like an avenue of gigantic blood drops. I was possessed with two ideas: to get some food, and to limp as soon and as far as my strength permitted out of this accursed, unearthly region. At Putney, the bridge was almost lost in a tangle of weed, and at Richmond, too, the Thames water poured in a broad and shallow stream across the meadows of Hampton and Twickenham. As the water spread, the weed followed, until the ruined villas of the Thames Valley were for a time lost in this red swamp whose margin I explored. On Putney Common, patches of ground exhibited the devastation of a cyclone. It filled me with indescribable terror to think how swiftly that desolating change had come. The redweed was less abundant, and the tall trees along the lane were free from the red creeper. All this time I saw no human beings, and no sign of the Martians. Perhaps even now they were destroying Berlin or Paris. For a time I believed that mankind had been swept out of existence, and that I stood there alone, the last man alive. Catherine. Under cover of a thicket of trees, I went to the edge of Wimbledon Common. There was no redweed to be seen, and as I prowled, hesitating, on the verge of the open, the sun rose, flooding it all with light and vitality.
Stop! Where do you come from?
I came from Mortlake. I was buried near the pit the Martians made about their cylinder. I managed to work my way out and escaped.
Well, there's no food about here. This is all my country, mister. All this hill down to the river and then back to Clapham and up to the edge of the common. Which way are you going?
I don't know. Leatherhead, I think.
There's only food for one here.
Well, that's fine. I've no wish to stop here. I just want to get back to my wife.
Your wife's in Leatherhead?
Perhaps. I doubt it. Look, I've told you, I've been buried in the ruins of a house 13 or 14 days. I don't know what's been happening.
It is you. The man from Woking. I thought you were killed at Weybridge.
It's Essex, isn't it? The artilleryman. How in God's name...
Well, they didn't kill everyone that day. And after they went away, I got off towards Walton across the fields. But... bloody hell.
What?
It's not 16 days altogether, but your hair's gone grey.
I'm not surprised. If you'd been through... God!
It's only a rook, Mr. Pearson. You lost a shoe.
Believe me, I was glad to be rid of it. Have you seen any Martians lately?
They've gone away across London. I guess they've got a bigger camp there.
Poor Warwick. I hope he got out in time.
Warwick?
And my brother. I never asked, do you have any family?
Probably not. Not anymore. Of a night, all over Hampstead Way, the skies are alive with their light. It's like a great city, and in the glare you can see them moving. And the night before last...
What?
It was just a matter of lights, but it was something, hovering, up in the air.
They've built a flying machine.
That's what it looked like to me.
Then it's all over with humanity. If they can do that, they'll simply go around the world, one country after another.
Aye, that they will. But it'll relieve things over here a bit. Besides, Mr. Pearson, weren't you satisfied it is up with humanity? I am. We're down. Beat.
Well, I suppose that as long as there are still survivors...
We're beat. It's all over. They've lost one fighting machine. Just one. They've made their footing good and crippled the British Empire, the greatest power in the world. They've walked all over us. And these are only pioneers. They've kept on coming. Nothing's to be done. We're under, Mr. Pearson.
Yes. Yes, perhaps you're right.
This isn't a war between worlds. It never was a war, any more than there's a war between man and ant. Now, follow me and stay low.
Have you observed any more cylinders coming down?
I've seen none these 5 or 6 days, but I've no doubt they're falling somewhere every night.
Such a long time ago. That first night in the observatory with Ogilvy. Perhaps they haven't sent any more cylinders.
Why wouldn't they?
Well, something wrong with their machinery back on Mars, perhaps? I don't know.
So what if there is? They'll get it right again. And even if there's a delay, how can it alter the end? Men and ants, Mr. Pearson, men and ants. The ants build their cities, live their lives, have wars, revolutions until the men want them out of the way, and then they go out of the way. And that's what we are now, ants.
Edible ants. The Martians view us as a food source.
I know. After Weybridge, I went south. Most of the people were hard at it, squealing and exciting themselves. But I'm not so fond of squealing. I've been in sight of death once or twice, and it's the man who keeps on thinking that comes through. I saw everyone tracking away south, and I was thinking, here's intelligent creatures, I thought. And it seems they want us for food. First, they'll smash us up. Ships, machines, guns, cities, all the order and organization. All that'll go. If we were the size of ants, we might pull through. But we're not. That's the first certainty.
That's not unreasonable.
At present, we're caught as we're wanted. A Martian only has to go a few miles to get a crowd on the run. But they won't keep on doing that. So soon as they've settled all our guns and ships, and smashed our railways, and done all the things they're doing over there, they'll begin catching us. Picking the best and storing us in cages. They haven't even begun on us yet.
You can't seriously mean that, Essex.
Everything that's happened so far is through our not having the sense to keep quiet, worrying them with guns and such foolery, and losing our heads, and rushing off in crowds to where there wasn't any more safety than where we were. They don't want to bother us yet. They're making all the things they couldn't bring with them. Getting things ready for the rest of their people. Instead of our rushing about blind, we've got to fix ourselves up according to the new state of affairs. That's how I see it. Cities, nations, civilization, progress. That game's up, Mr. Pearson.
Then what is there to live for?
Men like me are going on living for the sake of the breed. I tell you, I'm grim set on living. And if I'm not mistaken, you'll show what insides you've got too before long. We aren't going to be exterminated. And I don't mean to be caught either, and tamed and fattened and bred like a thundering ox.
I trust you have a plan.
Oh, there's lots of things that I've only begun to see clearly these last few days. We men are beat.
So you keep saying. So what are you doing then? What plans have you made?
I've been thinking about the drains.
The drains?
No, we have to invent a sort of life where men can live and breed and be sufficiently secure to bring the children up. I mean for us to live underground. Of course, those who don't know drains think horrible things, but under London are miles and miles of drains. A few days' rain will leave them sweet and clean. The main ones are big enough and airy enough for anyone. And then there's cellars, vaults, stores.
And the railway tunnels and subways.
You begin to see, Mr. Pearson? We may even be able to keep a watch and run about in the open when the Martians keep away. Play cricket, perhaps. And we form a band. Able-bodied, clean-minded men. We're not going to pick up just any rubbish that drifts in. Weaklings go out again.
As you meant me to go?
I parlayed, didn't I?
We won't quarrel about that.
Those who stop have to obey orders. Able-bodied, clean-minded women we want to. Mothers and teachers. Life is real again. And the useless and cumbersome have to die.
That's a very harsh policy, Essex.
We ought to be willing to die. It's a sort of disloyalty. To live and taint the race. But it's saving our knowledge and adding to it that's the thing. We must make great, safe places down deep and get all the books we can. Not novels and poetry, but science. That's where men like you come in, Mr. Pearson. It may not have to be so much we have to learn before. Just imagine this. 4 or 5 of their fighting machines. Heat rays, right and left. And not a Martian in them. Not a Martian, but men. Men who've learned the way how. Fancy having one of them lovely things with its heat ray wide and free, and then wong, 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 wong. Man's come back to his own.
For a while, the imaginative daring of the artilleryman and the tone of assurance and courage he assumed completely dominated my mind. I believed unhesitatingly both in his forecast of human destiny and in the practicability of his astonishing scheme. Eventually we arrived at a house on Putney Hill. He'd made his lair in the coal cellar, and when I saw the work he'd spent a week upon, a burrow scarcely 10 yards long, I had my first inkling of the gulf between his dreams and his powers. But I believed in him sufficiently to work with him all that morning until past midday at his digging.
We don't know enough. We've got to learn before we've got a chance. And we've got to live and keep independent while we learn. Those who mean to escape must get ready. I'm getting ready, mind you. It isn't all of us that are made for wild beasts. And that's what it's got to be. That's why I watched you.
You had your doubts about me.
Well, I didn't know it was you see. See, I thought you were one of those damn little clocks. They'd be no good. They haven't got any spirit in them, no proud dreams and no proud lust. You know, I've seen hundreds of them. Bit of breakfast in hand, running wild and shining to catch their little season ticket train for fear they'd get dismissed if they didn't. Working at businesses they were afraid to take the trouble to understand. Skedaddling back for fear they wouldn't be in time for dinner. Keeping indoors after dinner for fear of the back street. And then sleeping with their wives they married not because they wanted them, but because they had a bit of money that would make for safety in their own one little miserable skedaddle through the world. Lies insured, and a bit invested for fear of accidents. And on Sundays...
Fear of the hereafter.
As if hell was built for rabbits. The Martians. Well, they're a godsend to that sort. Nice, roomy cages, fattening food, careful breeding. And they'll wonder what people did before there were Martians to take care of them. Oh, there's lots that will take things as they are, and lots will be worried by a sort of feeling that it's all wrong, and they ought to be doing something. Whenever things are so that a lot of people feel they ought to be doing something, the weak always submit to persecution and the will of the Lord. Very likely you've seen the same thing. Those cages will be full of psalms and hymns and piety. The Martians will likely make pets of some of them, train them to do tricks. Well, who knows, maybe even get sentimental over the pet boy who grew up and had to be killed, huh? And some, maybe, they'll train to hunt us.
Impossible, Essex. No human being would ever...
Ah, what's the good of going on with such lies? There's men who do it cheerful. Lord help 'em. If they come after me, let's knock off a bit. I think it's time we reconnoitered from the roof of the house.
As you like, but I think I could dig for a little while longer.
Come on.
Essex, why were you walking about the common instead of digging here?
Taking the air. I was coming back. It's safer by night.
But the work.
Oh, can't always work, you know.
No Martians to be seen.
Traces of them, though. That bloody red weed covering the river. It swarms up the trees, kills the branches.
The plants are dependent upon water for propagation.
Science word. I was right about you.
I've been wondering about the wheat. At first I thought it might have come here in their cylinders by accident, but now I'm not so sure. The Martians, their world's too far gone in its cooling. And this world is still crowded with life, crowded only with what they regard as inferior animals. Kill all the plants, you reduce the level of oxygen. Perhaps that's intentional. The black vapor, the black smoke, it could be some sort of delivery method for Martian seed pods. The weed grows from the pod, and then perhaps they're deliberately altering the conditions of this world, turning it into a second Mars.
There's some champagne in the cellar.
I don't think we could dig very well on champagne.
Champagne! I'm host today. We've a heavy enough task before us. Let's take a rest and gather strength while we may.
Pursuant to this idea of a holiday, he insisted upon playing cards after we'd eaten. The artilleryman was no longer the energetic regenerator of his species I'd encountered in the morning. He was still optimistic, but it was a less kinetic, a more thoughtful optimism. I took a cigar and went upstairs to look across the London Valley. The northern hills were shrouded in darkness. The fires near Kensington glowed redly, and now and then an orange-red tongue of flame flashed up and vanished in the deep blue night. Nearer, I perceived a strange light, a pale, violet-purple fluorescent glow, quivering under the night breeze. For a space I could not understand it, and then I knew it must be the red weed from which this faint irradiation proceeded. With that realization, my dormant sense of wonder, my sense of the proportion of things, awoke again. I looked up to Mars, red and clear, glowing high in the west, and then gazed long and earnestly at the darkness of Hampstead and Highgate. My folly came to me with glaring exaggeration. I seemed a traitor to my wife and to my kind, and I was filled with remorse. I knew I wanted to find Catherine, that my heart ached for her and for the world of men. I resolved to leave this strange, undisciplined dreamer to his drink and gluttony, and go on into London. There was a black dust along the roadway from the bridge onwards, and it grew thicker in Fulham. The streets were horribly quiet. Where there was no black powder, it was curiously like a Sunday in the city, with the closed shops, the houses locked up and the blinds drawn.
Go away, shoo, leave me be.
The farther I penetrated into London, the profounder grew the stillness of expectation. At any time, the destruction that had already singed the northwestern borders of the metropolis and had annihilated Ealing and Kilburn might strike among these houses and leave them smoking ruins. Look, boy, at least the mansion survived. You are a boy, aren't you? It doesn't matter. Nothing does now. Nobody's going to live here again. It was near South Kensington that I came upon a strange sight. A bus overturned, and the skeleton of a horse picked clean. How long do you suppose it took the birds to do that, Warwick? Do you like the name Warwick? I used to have a brother called that. What the hell? That came from the north. Come on, Warwick! The voice grew stronger and stronger, though I could see nothing above the housetops on the north side of the park, save a haze of smoke to the northwest. The wailing took possession of me. Perhaps we could, I don't know, break into the Natural History Museum, find our way up to the summits of the towers. We could see better. What do you think, Warwick? Oh, ridiculous idea. As we emerged from the top of Baker Street, I saw the hood of the Martian fighting machine giant from which the howling proceeded. It's not moving. What do you suppose is the matter with it? It's going to fall. Run, boy, run! Did you see that? Did you see that? It just drove straight at that house. What happened to it? Warwick? Warwick? Oh no. Alone once more, I clambered among the ruins to see it. The twilight was now so far advanced that the blood with which the Martian's seat was smeared, and the gristle that remained of it, were almost invisible to me. Its tentacles were smashed and twisted. While that voice sounded, and I still had the dog for company, London had still seemed alive. Now there was nothing but this gaunt quiet. London gazed at me spectrally. The windows in the white houses were like the eye sockets of skulls. I hurried through the red weed that choked St. Edmund's Terrace and emerged upon the grass before the rising of the sun. I felt no fear, only a wild, trembling exultation. In another moment, I had scrambled up an earthen rampart and stood upon its crest, looking down into the Martian pit below me. And scattered about it, some in their overturned war machines, were the Martians. They're dead. Dead. Here and there they were scattered, nearly 50 altogether, in that great gulf they had made, overtaken by a death that must have seemed to them as incomprehensible as any death could be. To me also it was incomprehensible. All I knew was that these things that had been alive and so terrible to men were dead. For a moment I believed that God had repented, that the angel of death had slain them in the night. They're all dead! They're all dead! I looked at the wide expanse of houses and factories and churches, silent and abandoned, and I thought of the multitudinous hopes and efforts, the innumerable hosts of lives that had gone to build this human reef, and of the swift and ruthless destruction that had hung over it all. When I realized that the shadow had been rolled back, and that this vast dead city might be once more alive and powerful, I felt a wave of emotion that was near akin to tears. The torment was over. The survivors of the people scattered over the country, the thousands who had fled by sea, would begin to return. The pulse of life, growing stronger and stronger, would beat again in the empty streets. Whatever destruction was done, the hand of the destroyer was stayed. At the thought, I extended my hands towards the sky and began thanking God. Oh, Catherine, come back to me. Catherine? 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 Hello, Catherine? No, of course not. No one home. The house is deserted. No one's been here in a very long time. No one escaped but you, Richard. No one. Of course. Stupid. No one would have believed in the last years of the 19th century that this world was being watched keenly and closely by intelligences greater than man's. Microorganisms, which cause so much disease and pain on Earth, have never appeared upon Mars. 100 diseases, all the fevers and contagions of human life, consumption, cancers, tumours and such morbidities never entered the scheme of their life. Ultimately, they were slain by the putrefactive and disease bacteria against which their systems were unprepared. Slain after all man's devices had failed, by the humblest things that God, in his wisdom, has put upon this earth. By virtue of natural selection of our kind, we have developed resisting power. But there are no bacteria on Mars, and directly these invaders arrived, directly they drank and fed, our microscopic allies began to work their overthrow. By the toll of 1 billion deaths, man has bought his birthright of the Earth, and it is his against all comers. It would still be his were the Martians 10 times as mighty as they are, for neither do men live nor die in vain. The redweed too succumbed almost as quickly as it had spread. A cankering disease seized upon it, and it now appears that all terrestrial plants have acquired a resisting power against it. Hello?
Richard? Richard, are you here?
Catherine!
Oh, Richard!
I never thought I'd see you again.
I thought the same about you. I was afraid you were dead.
Oh, forgive me, Catherine. Please forgive me. I should never have left you.
None of that matters now. Thank mercy you're alive.
How on earth did you get here?
Well, she didn't come alone, old chap.
Warwick, you're here. I've been worrying about you.
I'm relieved to hear it. If it's any consolation, I've been worrying about me too. Oh, Richard, do excuse me. Allow me to introduce Mrs. George Elphinstone.
Mr. Pearson?
Mrs.
Elphinstone, my brother Richard.
I've heard so much about you, sir. Your wife has been quite frantic about your well-being.
I must admit I've despaired for my life on more than one occasion.
I'm afraid I find myself temporarily homeless, Mr. Pearson. Catherine has offered me the use of one of your spare bedrooms.
Of course. I'm afraid you must take us as you find us.
With everything that's happened, it's a miracle the house is still standing. Come along, my dear. I'll show you to your room. Watch your step.
Warwick, you and Mrs. Elphinstone...
It's early days, brother. She's only just found out she's a widow. Although, to be honest, we've both had our suspicions for some time. But we live in hope.
I fear that not nearly enough attention is being given to the possibility of another attack from Mars, whether it comes tomorrow or in 100 years. It may be that the destruction of the Martians is only a reprieve. To them, and not to us perhaps, is the future ordained. Whether we expect another invasion or not, our views of the human future must be greatly modified by these events. We have learnt now that we cannot regard this planet as being fenced in and a secure abiding place for man. We can never anticipate the unseen good or evil that may come upon us suddenly. This invasion has robbed us of that serene confidence in the future which is the most fruitful source of decadence. Before the cylinder fell, there was a general persuasion that through all the depths of space no life existed beyond the petty surface of our minute sphere. I must confess the stress and danger of the time have left an abiding sense of doubt and insecurity in my mind. I sit in my study, and suddenly I see again the healing valley below set with writhing flames, and feel the house about me empty and desolate. I go to London and see the busy multitudes in Fleet Street and the Strand, and it comes across my mind that they are but the ghosts of the past, haunting the streets that I have seen silent and wretched, phantasms in a dead city, the mockery of life in a galvanized body. Strange, too, it is to stand on Primrose Hill, to see the people walking to and fro about the Martian machine that stands there still, and to recall the time when I saw it, under the dawn of that last great day.
The War of the Worlds by H.G. Wells, starring David Alt as Richard Pearson, Fred Robbins as Essex, and J.T. Turner as the Reverend. Featured were Joseph Zamparelli as Professor Ogilvy, Shayna Dirick as Catherine Pearson and Mrs. Elphinstone, Robin Gabrielli as Warwick Pearson, Jackie Coco as Mrs. Wayne, Mark Thurner as the Lieutenant, Dan Powell as the ship captain, and the Martian vocals were by Seth Adam Sher. Tonight's play was dramatized for audio by M.J. Elliott based on the book by H.G. Wells. Executive producer Mark Vanderberg. Music by Jeffrey Gage. Produced by Seth Adam Sher. And directed by yours truly. For the Colonial Radio Theater on the Air, this is Jerry Robbins.